John's world had shrunk to the size of his farm after Martha passed. The fields, once a shared joy, now felt like a heavy burden. Each sunrise was a painful reminder of the empty space beside him, the silence where her laughter used to be. He went through the motions of tending the crops and feeding the animals, but his heart wasn't in it. His farmhouse, usually filled with the aroma of Martha's baking and the warmth of her presence, was now cold and sterile. He ate alone, staring at the untouched place setting that still sat at the head of the table. The neighbors offered their condolences and brought casseroles, but their well-meaning gestures only amplified his isolation. He appreciated their kindness, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was living in a separate reality, one shrouded in a thick fog of grief. Even the loyal farm dog, Blue, seemed to sense his master's despair, nudging his hand with a wet nose and offering a mournful whine. John would pat Blue's head, finding a small measure of comfort in the animal's unwavering affection, but it wasn't enough to fill the aching void in his soul. He was a ghost in his own life, a shadow moving through a world that no longer held any color. The setting sun cast long shadows across the barn as John began his nightly rounds. It was a ritual, a habit ingrained over decades, but tonight it felt especially tedious. He shuffled through the familiar space, the scent of hay and manure a constant reminder of his life's work. He checked the stalls, ensuring the cows were comfortable, and refilled their water troughs. As he moved toward the back of the barn, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A shadow shifted in the hayloft, a space usually reserved for storing winter feed. He paused, his heart quickening with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Hello?" he called out, his voice raspy from disuse. Silence. He grabbed a pitchfork, holding it more as a shield than a weapon, and cautiously approached the ladder leading to the loft. The wooden rungs creaked under his weight as he climbed, each step amplifying the suspense. Reaching the top, he peered into the dimness, his eyes struggling to adjust. And then he saw her. A young woman, huddled in the corner, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She was small and thin, her clothes rumpled and dusty. She looked like a startled rabbit, caught in the glare of headlights. John lowered the pitchfork, his apprehension replaced by concern. "Who are you?" he asked gently, trying to sound less threatening. "What are you doing here?" Sarah flinched at John's question, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't hurt me," she pleaded. John, seeing her fear, softened his tone even more. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to understand. Are you lost?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she shook her head. "I ran away," she confessed, her voice cracking. I couldn't stay there anymore." He waited patiently, allowing her to gather her thoughts. Finally, she began to explain, her words tumbling out in a rush. She spoke of constant arguments, a mother struggling with her own demons, and a stepfather who was often angry and unkind. The house, she said, had become a battleground, a place filled with shouting and slamming doors. She hadn't planned to run, but one particularly bad night, after a terrible fight, she'd simply walked out the door, taking only the clothes on her back and a small bag of snacks. She'd walked for miles, following the back roads until she stumbled upon John's farm. The barn seemed like a safe haven, a place to rest and hide until she could figure out what to do next. "I just needed a place to be safe," she finished, her voice barely audible. "Just for a little while." John listened to Sarah's story, his heart aching for the young girl. His first instinct was caution. He was a simple farmer, a widower living alone. Harboring a runaway could bring trouble, legal complications he didn't need. He thought about calling the sheriff, doing what was right, but the image of Sarah's terrified face stopped him. He saw a flicker of Martha in her eyes, a vulnerability that tugged at his heartstrings. Martha had always had a soft spot for those in need, always ready to offer a helping hand. He remembered the stray animals she'd brought home, the lonely souls she'd befriended. He hesitated, wrestling with his conscience. The responsible thing would be to call the authorities. But looking at Sarah, he saw not a criminal, but a scared child in desperate need of kindness. A wave of empathy washed over him, pushing aside his apprehension. He couldn't turn her away. He wouldn't. "All right, Sarah," he said softly. "You can stay here, for now. But we need to figure something out. This can't be a permanent solution." He knew he was taking a risk, but in that moment, helping Sarah felt like the only right thing to do. It was a spark of purpose in the darkness of his grief. The next few days fell into a pattern of furtive exchanges and whispered conversations. John was careful, always looking over his shoulder, making sure no one was around before approaching the barn. He'd pack a small bag with sandwiches, fruit, and bottled water, leaving it near the ladder to the hayloft when he knew Sarah was alone. Their interactions were brief and cautious. Sarah would peek out from the loft, her eyes filled with gratitude, offering a shy, "thank you," before quickly retreating back into the shadows. John would simply nod, offering a reassuring smile, and then hurry back to his work, his heart filled with a mixture of anxiety and purpose. He brought her a worn blanket and a couple of old sweaters from Martha's closet, hoping to provide some comfort against the chill of the night. He even managed to sneak in a small, battery-operated lamp, allowing her to read in the evenings. He was always aware of the risk he was taking. Every passing car, every unexpected visitor, sent a jolt of fear through him. He knew he couldn't keep Sarah hidden forever, but for now, he was determined to provide her with a safe haven, a temporary escape from the troubles that had driven her away. He started locking the barn door at night, a small measure to ensure her safety and his own peace of mind. A violent storm swept through the valley one night, the wind howling like a banshee and the rain lashing against the barn. John lay awake in his bed, listening to the fury of the elements, his mind filled with worry for Sarah. The old barn was sturdy, but he knew it had its weaknesses. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the night, followed by the sound of splintering wood. He shot out of bed, grabbed his flashlight and raced towards the barn, his heart pounding in his chest. The wind tore at him as he struggled to open the barn door, revealing a scene of chaos. A section of the roof had collapsed, and debris was scattered everywhere. "Sarah," he yelled, his voice barely audible above the storm. He heard a weak cry from the hayloft. Climbing the ladder, he found Sarah huddled in a corner, shivering and covered in dust. A piece of falling timber had grazed her arm, leaving a nasty gash. Ignoring his own safety, John carefully helped her down the ladder and into the relative shelter of the barn's main floor. He quickly assessed her injury, his hands gentle and reassuring. "It's going to be all right," he said, his voice calm despite his inner turmoil. "We need to get you inside." He helped her into the house, their secret now exposed by the storm's destructive force. With Sarah safely inside the house, John cleaned and bandaged her arm, his touch gentle and reassuring. He offered her a warm bath and a set of Martha's old pajamas, which were far too big but provided a sense of comfort. That night, Sarah slept in the spare room, the first time she'd slept in a real bed in weeks. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, sunny sky. John and Sarah sat at the kitchen table, sharing a simple breakfast of toast and eggs. It was the first time John had shared a meal with anyone since Martha's passing. Conversation was stilted at first, but as they ate, they began to talk, tentatively at first, then with increasing ease. John told Sarah about Martha, about their life on the farm, about the joys and hardships they had shared. Sarah, in turn, shared more about her life, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, her love for animals. As they talked, a sense of trust began to grow between them. They spent the day cleaning up the barn, working side by side, their silence comfortable and companionable. John realized that Sarah wasn't just a runaway, she was a kind, intelligent young woman with a good heart. And Sarah saw in John not just a gruff farmer, but a gentle soul who was hurting just as much as she was. They were two lost souls, finding solace in each other's company. As Sarah's arm healed, she began to help John with the daily farm chores. She was eager to learn and surprisingly capable, despite her lack of experience. She helped him feed the animals, milk the cows, and even learned to drive the old tractor, her face beaming with pride. John found himself looking forward to the work again. Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious, and her presence breathed new life into the farm. He taught her about the different crops, the cycles of nature, and the importance of hard work and dedication. She, in turn, brought a fresh perspective and a youthful energy that had been missing since Martha's passing. He noticed he was smiling more, laughing even. The farm, which had felt like a burden, was now a shared responsibility, a joint project that brought them closer together. He found himself talking to her about things he hadn't spoken of in years, sharing his hopes and dreams for the future. Sarah's presence wasn't just easing his workload, it was healing his heart. He was still grieving for Martha, but the sharp edges of his sorrow were beginning to soften. He realized that life, even after loss, could still hold moments of joy and connection. Sarah had given him a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to care again. She had brought purpose back into his life. The newfound peace on the farm was shattered one afternoon when a sheriff's car pulled into the driveway. John's heart leaped into his throat. He knew this day might come, but he'd hoped it wouldn't. He glanced at Sarah, who was tending the vegetable garden, and gave her a subtle warning look. Sheriff Brody, a kind-faced man with a weary smile, approached John, removing his hat. "Afternoon, John," he said. "I'm looking into a missing person report. A young woman, about 16, ran away from home a couple of weeks ago. Her parents are worried sick." John forced himself to remain calm, his palms sweating. "I haven't seen anyone like that, Sheriff," he replied, trying to sound casual. "Just me and the dog here." The sheriff's eyes scanned the property, lingering for a moment on the vegetable garden where Sarah was working. "Her name is Sarah Miller," he continued, pulling out a photograph. "Have you seen her around?" John's breath caught in his throat. The photograph was unmistakably Sarah. He had to protect her, but lying to the sheriff felt wrong. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. This was it. Their secret was about to be exposed. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Even before the sheriff's visit, John had found himself naturally falling into a role of mentorship with Sarah. He shared his knowledge of farming, teaching her how to plant seeds, prune trees, and care for the animals. He showed her how to fix fences, repair machinery, and even how to tell the weather by observing the clouds. But his lessons went beyond just farming skills. He taught her practical life skills, like how to balance a checkbook, change a tire, and cook simple meals. He shared stories of his own life, his successes and failures, offering advice and guidance based on his experiences. He realized that Sarah was starved for attention and affection, craving a stable and supportive presence in her life. He tried his best to fill that void, offering her a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and a steady hand to guide her. He never explicitly tried to replace her parents, but he couldn't help but feel a paternal affection for her. He saw her potential, her intelligence, and her kind heart. He wanted to help her build a better future, to give her the tools and the confidence to succeed. In many ways, he was becoming the father figure she had always longed for, and she, in turn, was filling a void in his heart that had been empty for far too long. The silence that had haunted John's house since Martha's passing began to fade, replaced by the sound of Sarah's laughter. She had a bright, infectious giggle that filled the rooms, chasing away the shadows of grief. She would hum while she cooked, sing along to the radio, and tell silly jokes that made John chuckle, even when he didn't want to. She brought a vibrancy back into the house that had been missing for so long. She rearranged the furniture, adding her own personal touches, like the colorful wildflowers she picked from the fields and arranged in vases. She filled the kitchen with the aroma of baking, experimenting with new recipes and sharing her creations with John. The house, once a sterile and lonely space, became a home again. John found himself looking forward to coming back from the fields, eager to see Sarah's smiling face and hear about her day. He started eating at the table again, no longer staring at Martha's empty place setting. Sarah's presence was like sunshine after a long winter. She didn't replace Martha, but she filled a different kind of void, a void of companionship and connection. She brought light and laughter back into his life, reminding him that even after loss, joy was still possible. She helped him to remember how to smile again, how to laugh, and how to live. With the immediate crisis of the storm damage behind them, John and Sarah turned their attention to fixing up the farm. The barn roof needed patching, fences needed mending, and the old farmhouse could use a fresh coat of paint. It was a daunting task, but they tackled it together, side by side. They spent hours hammering, sawing, and painting, their teamwork seamless and efficient. John showed Sarah how to properly secure the roof panels, and she, in turn, helped him mix the paint and reach the higher spots. They laughed at their mistakes, encouraged each other through the tough parts, and celebrated their successes, big and small. As they worked, they shared stories and dreams, their bond growing stronger with each nail hammered and each brushstroke applied. They talked about the future, about what they wanted to accomplish, both individually and together. John shared his vision for expanding the farm, and Sarah spoke of her dream of becoming a veterinarian and helping animals in need. The physical labor was demanding, but it was also therapeutic. It allowed them to channel their energy into something productive, something tangible. They were building more than just a farm, they were building a foundation for their friendship, a testament to their resilience and their unwavering support for each other. Each repaired fence post and freshly painted wall served as a reminder of their shared commitment and their unbreakable bond. Sheriff Brody's eyes narrowed as he looked at John, sensing his hesitation. "John, I need you to be honest with me. This girl is vulnerable, and her parents are desperate to find her. Have you seen her?" He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. John met the sheriff's gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. Sarah was inside the house, listening to every word. He knew he was putting himself at risk, but he couldn't betray her trust. "No, Sheriff," he said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I haven't seen her. I swear." The sheriff studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. John held his breath, bracing himself for the inevitable. He could see the doubt in the sheriff's eyes, but he also saw a hint of understanding. "All right, John," the sheriff said finally, sighing. "I'll take your word for it. But if you do see anything at all, please give me a call." He handed John his card and turned to leave. As the sheriff drove away, John leaned against the porch railing, his legs weak with relief. He had lied to the law, a line he never thought he would cross. But he had done it to protect Sarah, the young woman who had brought light back into his life. He knew the consequences could be severe, but in that moment, he had no regrets. He had done what he believed was right. Unbeknownst to John, Sarah had been listening from the hallway as the sheriff questioned him. She heard every word, every hesitation in John's voice, every lie he told to protect her. A wave of guilt washed over her. She couldn't let him risk everything for her. That night, as John slept, Sarah quietly packed her few belongings into a small bag. She wrote a note, her hand trembling, pouring out her gratitude and explaining her decision. She knew it would hurt John, but she couldn't bear the thought of him facing legal trouble because of her. She crept out of the house, leaving the note on his pillow. The farm was bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight, the field stretching out before her like a path to the unknown. She hesitated for a moment, her heart aching at the thought of leaving John, the only person who had ever truly cared for her. But she knew it was the right thing to do. She had to protect him, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. With tears streaming down her face, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind the only home she had known in weeks. She hoped that someday, she could repay John for his kindness, but for now, she had to disappear to protect him. John awoke to an empty house, a familiar ache returning to his chest. He reached for Sarah, a habit that had quickly become a comforting routine, but his hand met only cold sheets. Panic flared as he noticed the note on his pillow. He snatched it up, his eyes scanning the words. Sarah's heartfelt message of gratitude and her explanation for leaving sent a jolt of fear through him. He couldn't let her go. Not again. He had lost Martha, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing Sarah too. He threw on his boots and raced out the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He scanned the fields, his eyes searching for any sign of her. "Sarah," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. Sarah, he finally spotted her near the edge of the woods, her small figure silhouetted against the rising sun. He ran towards her, his breath ragged, his heart aching. "Sarah," he called out, his voice hoarse. She stopped, turning to face him, her eyes red and swollen. "John, you shouldn't be here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm doing this to protect you." "Protect me?" John said, his voice rising in disbelief. "You think leaving is going to protect me? You're wrong, Sarah. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care about the law. I just care about you." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Don't leave, Sarah," he pleaded. "Please. Stay here with me. We'll face whatever comes together. I promise you, we'll figure it out." He looked into her eyes, his own filled with sincerity and love. He knew he couldn't force her to stay, but he hoped his words, his feelings, would be enough to convince her. He wanted her to know that she wasn't alone, that he was there for her, no matter what. He wanted her to understand that their bond was stronger than any fear or any legal trouble. After a long and tearful conversation, John and Sarah made a difficult decision. They couldn't keep running from the truth. They needed to tell Sheriff Brody everything, hoping he would understand their situation and offer them some leniency. They drove into town, John's hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, Sarah sitting beside him, her face pale but determined. They walked into the sheriff's office, their hearts pounding in their chests. Sheriff Brody looked surprised to see them. "John. Sarah. What are you doing here?" John took a deep breath. "Sheriff, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady. "We haven't been honest with you." He and Sarah proceeded to tell the sheriff the whole story, from Sarah's difficult home life to her hiding in the barn, to the bond they had formed. They explained John's initial hesitation, his eventual decision to help her, and the lie he had told to protect her. They laid bare their souls, hoping for understanding and compassion. As they spoke, the sheriff listened intently, his expression softening as he heard their story. He saw the genuine connection between them, the love and respect that had blossomed in the midst of their difficult circumstances. He realized that this wasn't just a case of harboring a runaway, it was a story of two lost souls finding solace in each other's company. Sheriff Brody, a kind and understanding man, was deeply moved by their story. He saw the genuine love and connection between John and Sarah and recognized that they had both been through a lot. He knew he couldn't simply ignore the fact that Sarah was a runaway and that John had lied to him, but he also knew that punishing them wouldn't solve anything. He decided to take a more compassionate approach. He assured John that he wouldn't press charges for harboring a runaway, recognizing the good intentions behind his actions. He explained to Sarah that she couldn't simply run away from her problems and that she needed help to address her difficult home situation. He contacted a social worker, explaining Sarah's circumstances and requesting assistance. The social worker, a compassionate woman named Ms. Evans, arrived at the sheriff's office and spoke with Sarah, listening to her concerns and offering her guidance. Ms. Evans explained that she could help Sarah connect with resources that would provide her with a safe and supportive environment. She assured Sarah that she wouldn't be forced to return to her previous home if she didn't feel safe there. She offered her the option of entering a foster care program, where she would receive counseling, support, and a chance to pursue her dreams. Sarah, relieved and hopeful, agreed to consider the option. After careful consideration and with John's unwavering support, Sarah decided to enter the foster care program. She was placed with a kind family who lived in a nearby town, a couple who had raised their own children and were now eager to provide a loving home for a young person in need. Although Sarah was no longer living on the farm, her bond with John remained as strong as ever. He visited her every week, bringing her homemade meals and spending the afternoon talking, laughing, and offering her encouragement. He helped her with her homework, listened to her anxieties about school, and celebrated her successes, big and small. He made sure she knew that he was always there for her, no matter what. He attended her school events, took her to the movies, and even helped her find a volunteer position at a local animal shelter, fulfilling her dream of working with animals. Sarah, in turn, continued to be a source of joy and companionship for John. She called him every night, sharing the details of her day and offering him her unwavering support. She helped him with the farm chores whenever she could and continued to bring laughter and light back into his life. Even though their living situation had changed, their bond remained unbreakable, a testament to the power of love, compassion, and unwavering support. Years passed, and Sarah thrived in her foster home. She excelled in school, graduating at the top of her class. With John's unwavering encouragement, she pursued her dream of becoming a veterinarian, earning a scholarship to a prestigious university. John, too, found a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment in his life. The farm flourished under his care, and he continued to mentor other young people in the community, sharing his wisdom and experience. The ache of losing Martha never completely disappeared, but it was softened by the joy and love he found in his friendship with Sarah. Their bond remained unbreakable, a testament to the power of human connection. They were two lost souls who had found each other in the most unexpected of circumstances, their lives forever changed by their chance encounter. Sarah often visited the farm, helping John with the chores and reminiscing about their time together. They would sit on the porch, watching the sunset, their hearts filled with gratitude for the unexpected friendship that had healed them both. John, no longer consumed by grief, found joy in watching Sarah blossom into a confident, compassionate young woman. Sarah, no longer running from her past, found strength and stability in John's unwavering love and support. Their story was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found in the most unlikely of places, and that love, in its many forms, can heal even the deepest wounds.